Hello, welcome to this very special podcast episode with my guest, Tanya Borowski. Tanya has spent 20 years studying nutrition and functional medicine and is still studying now, and it's an ongoing endeavour. She's become a great friend of mine. She's a wonderful, inspiring, brilliant person. There's nothing she doesn't know about all health, but especially women's health. She's a registered nutritionist and, get this right, Institute for Functional Medicine certified practitioner, which is very impressive, which you'll learn about in the episode. Tanya's special interests are women's health, including menopause, but also younger women, so menstrual cycle, fertility, IBS, digestive complaints, actually pretty much everything. But in this episode, we try to cover as much as we can, but we are going to be doing an in-depth series later this year. But we talk about the menstrual cycle, we talk about digestive issues, we talk about the effects of stress on our bodies, and just a general chinwag, which hopefully you'll find interesting. I'm going to go straight in with a big question.
Okay.
So I would summarise a woman's life as being a life of hormones.
Good.
And that's quite a simplistic way of putting it. Would you agree and or would you disagree? How would you summarise a woman's life?
I totally understand where you're coming from. In a one-word answer, a woman's life is influenced significantly by the ebbing and flowing of our hormones and how those hormones then interact and play with all of the other systems that make up the body. And because a woman, the female body biochemistry is so much more complex than a male's, that has sort of much broader reaching symptoms and causes and effects. So yes, if we were going to really sort of simplify that down, yes, a woman, the way she lives her life and how she feels is really exquisitely influenced by the health of her hormones and our hormonal system, which in science we call the endocrine system, is probably one of the most influential systems that impacts the health of a woman and the different life stages thereof of that woman.
Yeah.
Does that sort of fit your narrative?
That's a much cleverer answer.
I don't know about that. It's maybe just a bit more waffly.
No, well, I think the thing, you sort of, hear this sort of jokes like, oh, me hormones, and, kind of, I don't think anybody, well, you do, but most people and most women don't understand their hormones at all.
Yes.
And we don't realise how they affect everything, the way we feel physically, mentally. And I think if we could understand that right from when that whole process begins,
yes,
our lives would be a lot, maybe not easier, but we would understand what we're dealing with. Because sometimes, when you think, oh, I want to kill everyone, or, I want to get divorced. And then you think, and then your period starts and you're like, oh, that was that.
Yep.
Hormones can make you feel quite intense things.
Absolutely.
And I'm waffling now, but
I think what comes into that is that we're living in a society where medicine, which is the advances in our medical system have been immense. But where we have arrived at now is we're very quick to want to give something a label and to diagnose and to then what that does is it actually pigeonholes that particular situation.
Yeah.
So therefore then the terminology hormonal. It's my hormones. I want to, quote, balance my hormones.
Yeah.
My hormones are imbalanced. I have estrogen dominance. All of these are expressions, colloquialisms that have come about because we basically this obsession with wanting to label something. And I think that if we come back to truly taking the time to actually understand and want to understand our physiology, then we are far better equipped to be able to use language that we can then communicate with particular health professionals to give them clues about what could be going on in their body. And also just actually having a better understanding of how our bodies work, that we all do it. We all take it completely for granted in our 20s, 30s, and it's not from a female perspective really until we arrive in our 40s when things naturally start to change, that we then start maybe not taking our bodies for granted.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And that I think that actually quite leads us on quite nicely to. So I learned, bit of background for the listeners. You do lots of education for health practitioners, doctors, nutritional therapists around female health, hormones, the menstrual cycle, menopause, all of those things. And I came to a couple of talks that you did, and as a 51-year-old woman, I learned things about the menstrual cycle that I had no clue about, that shocked me that I didn't know. But then I thought, well, I'm pretty sure if I don't know, most people don't know these things, because, I know a fair amount about health. So we are actually going to do a more in-depth podcast on this.
We are.
So we'll save all the really juicy bits. But the thing that I could never get out of my head that you explained was that it takes around 10 years?
Yeah, about 7 to 10 years.
Yeah. Could you explain a little bit
Sure.
about the menstrual cycle when it starts?
So it takes, what we're referring to is it takes up to 7 to 10 years for a young woman's menstrual cycle to gain its rhythm.
Yes.
So and we can use different terms, but I like to say, to bed in, but really to gain that rhythm. So most women are aware vaguely that the menstrual cycle is sort of governed by 2 key hormones. Well, no, it's 4 actually, but sort of they know that we produce estrogen in what's called the first half of the cycle, and then in the second half of the cycle, it's more. In fact, it's infinitely more dominated by progesterone. And when a woman starts her period, which is called menarche, and the average age for that now is 12 and a half years. And that has become earlier. So certainly since we were teenagers.
Yeah.
And there are numerous reasons for that. But when a young woman starts her period, what's happening inside of the body is all of the thousands of follicles that she was born with are beginning to get a message from the brain by way of a hormone called follicle stimulating hormone to get busy and to start releasing estrogen. And they start releasing estrogen, and eventually one of them becomes what we call the dominant follicle. So that is the follicle that then will go on to be eventually ovulated. Okay. And that production, that increasing production of follicle stimulating hormone produces, and this is completely natural, produces lots of estrogen.
Right.
Okay. But it certainly doesn't happen immediately, that very first cycle, that ovum, that egg that develops within the ovaries is actually released. It just takes a while because this is a new process, even though it's a completely natural process for that to happen. And it's only when we ovulate do we then produce progesterone, because that is the side of that is what happens when we release the egg, and that doesn't always happen. And it can take quite a long time for that rhythm to actually begin. So that flow of estrogen and then progesterone and then it all dropping off just takes a while. And I liken it to when our kids learn how to drive a car. They don't immediately get in the car and sail beautifully down the road. There is a lot of stalling, there's a lot of bunny hopping down the road. And that is exactly what happens when we start our period. It's a process. And so I have a big issue, which is, and I'm not anti the oral contraceptive pill as a right for women as a contraception, but I do feel it's incredibly important for young women who are offered the oral contraceptive pill to be informed that ceasing that process, stopping that communication, is basically then there is no the menstrual cycle has very little chance of bedding in and learning its rhythm, because that communication is being switched off. And so that is one very significant side effect that I feel that young women should be made aware of. That is informed consent of switching off that beautiful communication.
Yeah. To use I really like the learning to drive the car analogy, because it helps people like me understand. And the other thing that really struck me, so the two things was, one, I mean, I've been in this situation where, I was 19, I had heavy periods, not abnormally heavy, because that's a different thing, but, heavy.
Yeah.
Painful, not nice. But I didn't need contraception at the time, but my GP said, put you on the pill, it'll balance your hormones, you'll feel much better.
Yeah.
Okay, so we all, we've heard this whole balance your hormones with the pill. But the pill doesn't do that, does it?
No, it doesn't. And that is such a crucial point. It's so, and I absolutely have heard this from clients of mine and from practitioners that that I mentor. Their clients hear this all the time. Exactly that. We'll put you on the pill either to, quote, balance your hormones, or worse, to kickstart if they've gone for months or a year without having a period, which we call amenorrhea, to kickstart your hormones.
Yeah.
And this is just not physiologically correct.
No.
So first of all, the combined oral contraceptive pill, which is the most commonly used, that means that it's a combination of synthetic estradiol. It's called equine estradiol, so it's a synthetic form, which is not the same as body identical estradiol that is used in body or bioidentical hormone therapy. And it also combines a synthetic form of progesterone, which is called a progestin. And that is very, very different to, both of those chemicals are actually very different in structure to our natural hormones. So because of that, they have a very different, and arguably for the sake of this podcast, a more potent impact on the receptors that these hormones work on. So you don't just take a hormone and you swallow it, or you put it on your skin and it enters into your bloodstream and it has an effect. It has an effect by finding its receptor,
right?
Like a lock and a key. It finds its receptor, and it then nestles into that receptor, and it elicits what's called a transcription, a response within that cell. So the synthetic chemicals in the combined oral contraceptive pill have a much, much stronger effect at the receptor. So they sort of overwhelm the system, and thereby the communication between the brain and the ovaries stops. So that, going back to the learning to drive analogy, that is never taught.
No.
So whenever they come off the oral contraceptive pill, then that teaching still has to take place. The brain needs to pick up its conversation again with the ovaries to say, okay, come on, you've got all of these follicles, let's go now. Because the main reason that women come off the pill is because they want to become pregnant.
Yeah.
And quite commonly, sadly, that isn't quite as easy because they've been on the pill for a decade or 2 decades and the communication is broken down and they don't know how to talk to each other on a very simplistic level. So they have to bunny hop down the road for quite some time to get that communication and get to know each other and start that communication network happening again so that the system starts working. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, and that can take quite a bit of time?
Yeah, I mean, it's realistically, it's not 7 years. So for when it's not quite, it's not the same as when a young woman starts her period, that communication. But absolutely, it can take 2-3 years.
Yeah.
It definitely can. Now, some women absolutely can fall pregnant at the drop of a hat, and I'm not for a second saying that everybody that goes on the pill is going to have a problem becoming pregnant. That absolutely not. But it is but you are messing with your natural biochemistry.
Yeah.
And to answer your original question, it absolutely does not balance hormones.
No.
You're giving super physiological, which means much higher than normal doses of a synthetic hormone. So it is not balancing anything. It is essentially you're over prescribing and overwhelming hormone receptors.
Yeah.
It's not balancing anything. So yeah, I'm quite passionate about this.
Yes,
probably.
I do. And that's one of the reasons I love you and I wanted you on this podcast. And we're doing a whole series about this.
Yeah, I'm very excited
because, I'm very excited about that. It's going to be amazing. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, isn't it?
Hopefully that's kind of given you some, our listeners a bit of, okay. And that's really that's really what I feel I'm maybe put on this planet is a little bit over the top, but that's what I really feel that my calling in this industry is to inform and to engage women to ask the right questions, so to feel confident that they can ask the right questions because it's your body.
Yeah.
And so you're totally entitled to ask to get this information. So you can ask the right question and feel sure that you are doing the right thing for you in your situation.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what I feel really passionately about.
Yeah. I wholeheartedly support you in that. And I'm going to help get your message out.
Oh.
I feel very passionately about that. Partly because I went through the same sort of thing and I've got teenage daughters.
Yeah.
And, and I'm still hearing, that nothing's really changed. And I think that's, and your point around informed consent is huge, because that's fine if you decide to go on the contraceptive pill, but you know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because the person who's prescribed it, which I think sadly a lot of them don't entirely understand what it's doing.
Yeah.
You can't make that decision. And if you're young and you just go, oh, okay, yeah, that sounds good. So I'm 100% with you on that one. I think talking about, contraception, it leads us into quite a nice bit around, obviously there's still no male equivalent. I think something's being worked on.
Yes, in Australia, actually.
Excitingly, right?
Yeah, in Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it still hasn't arrived into market, but I believe it might be this year.
Brilliant.
2024.
So hopefully...
Yeah, so things are beginning to into move, that it's not always put at the...
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't understand what the issue is with condoms. I mean, I just...
No. Yeah.
Love a good old condom.
Right. Well, that's it, isn't it? That's I think one of your, was it Nikki Kay or was it like, somebody said, so what's the safest form of contraception for women?
Yeah.
And the answer is the condom.
Absolutely.
And why is that? Let's sell the condom to the people.
Well, obviously it's the most preventable against sexual diseases, which has got to be a good thing. And it is, it has a 98% efficacy rate, which actually so does the oral contraceptive pill. So, and it doesn't have any of the side effects, if you like, that of which are many, which we will probably go into in great detail in our series. But yes, depending on the type of pill that you are on, many of them can contribute to weight gain. Many of them, and there's lots of data to support this, that there are long-term mental health effects from taking the pill. The type of estrogen in the pill changes the biochemistry in the brain, and this is also really important. That what we spoke about at the beginning is that yes, our endocrine system, our hormonal system is a very powerful system, and it has impacts across all of our other systems. And one of those systems is the neuroendocrine system, where we make our neurotransmitters. So our feel-good neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine, right, for example, and natural endogenously, i.e. we make it ourselves from our ovaries, if we're estrogen is a really, really important cofactor, i.e. it's needed as part of the ingredients to make serotonin, wouldn't you know? To make dopamine. Yeah, right. It's together with other really important minerals and nutrients. But this is just one example of the intricacy of the beauty of how clever and wise the body is in terms of how interconnected it is, and why if we water down these array of symptoms that women are experiencing as a hormone imbalance, we are doing every woman a disservice by not respecting and understanding the interconnectedness that all of these hormones and neurotransmitters play a part in. So it is really important to understand that.
Yeah. Oh, it's very inspiring listening to you.
Oh.
How did you end up getting into, well, because you're a specialist in women's health, right? And would you say that? How did you end up? I spent years doing something completely unrelated, but I'd always been. I was in the travel industry in sales and marketing for many years, but I'd always been interested in nutrition, actually. And back in the day, a lot of these listeners will remember, I was working in London in the early 90s, and I bought the Nutrition Bible by Patrick Holford. Remember that? Yeah.
It's a big red Bible. Yes. And I, at that point, was living the high life in London, that decade of working hard, playing hard, and having oodles of fun. And I contemplated leaving my job in travel and going to retrain as a nutritionist then. But if truth be told, I was just having far too much fun traveling the world and visiting various wine bars. So I didn't, but I devoured that book. And then years later, I emigrated to Australia, and I had my daughter was born there. And I think this happens to many women, was that I just you change, don't you? You look the same, and you feel, and you sort of go back to your place of work. And I just intrinsically knew that there'd just been a massive shift, and I needed to change what I was doing. So I went back to college, and this was in Australia, and I retrained. I did a nutrition degree in Sydney, and then came back to the UK and did more nutrition training with the College of Naturopathic Medicine. And I kind of came out into the world and sort of started working as a nutritional therapist, and very quickly realized that I needed to know more. And I really just had an absolute love of the body's biochemistry and understanding how all these different systems are interconnected, how the digestive system interconnects with the hormone system and the cardiovascular system, et cetera, et cetera. So I then became involved in the world of what is called functional medicine, and then that wasn't being taught anywhere other than the States. So I went to the bank and took out a loan.
Wow.
And basically traveled back and forth to the States for over the course of 3 years to qualify in functional medicine and become a certified functional medicine practitioner. And now you can do that remotely, but back then it was in person, which actually was just a whole other introduction to a whole other new tribe of people that have now become esteemed colleagues and friends, the likes of Robin Poulier and Tracy Randall, etc., and sort of all of these amazing practitioners that bring in functional medicine to their health. And functional medicine integrates nutritional therapy, but functional medicine is looking at the body, understanding the biochemistry to the detail that you are taught, I would arguably say, in medical school or beyond. Some doctors are going to be yelling at the screen, but it is taught in such intricate depth. And then you then take a step back, and you're then asking the question, okay, where you connect the dots to the presenting problem in front of you. Where is the most noise on this beautiful web of all of these interconnected systems of chemicals and hormones and neurotransmitters that is taking the most pressure? And that is how, and you integrate nutrition, because nutrition is foundational and fundamental to changing tissue chemistry, right? Because that's what we're doing. When we take a blood draw, we're drawing a sample of our blood, but within that blood, what is in that is it's live information of markers of hormones, of chemicals, of proteins, of clotting factors, and all of these analytes tell us information. But it's about it's the art of how we interpret that in line of, and that's what grabbed me, and that's what then led me into how do I want to take this information and how do I want to share this knowledge. And it's a passion I feel that because women's health is so historically under-resourced in terms of certain conditions that are unique to women, like PCOS, endometriosis. All of these conditions have historically just been so under-researched and resourced, and it takes a significant toll on the health of a woman, be her your friend, your daughter, your auntie, your grandma, whoever, someone you walk by in the street and they're just not feeling that great. And and this type of medicine can truly help that woman, however, in what she is to you. And that is powerful.
Yeah.
I feel quite emotional.
I know.
I really,
Yeah. Oh, you're making me emotional. It is. So I think, because I understand when you say functional medicine, I know what that is, but a lot of listeners might not know what that is. So the way I would describe it is, when you go to a doctor, and apologies to all the doctors that are going to get offended, but it's just tough, I'm afraid, is, okay, I've got this thing. Why do I have it? What is causing this thing?
Yeah.
And that's the bit I want to sort out. So I'm going to think of a really bad analogy now, but let's say, I don't know, you've got a leaky tap and you get the plumber around. you don't want the plumber just to sort of tape it over and go, well, that'll do. It's not leaking anymore. Well, no, but something's making it leak. So you need to fix the thing that's making it leak.
Yeah.
Because it's just going to carry on.
Yes.
And actually, you plastering it over, I'm quite getting into my analogy now, you're going to cause pressure somewhere else.
Totally, exactly right.
So I've always been frustrated at medicine for lots of reasons, but that is one of the things that
you've hit the nail on the head.
And
if we're going to use this toolbox as an analogy, but you've hit, and it's
that what functional medicine is.
It is. Yeah. It's the perfect analogy, and so your tap analogy then exactly so, because that's the way that it's the only way that our GPs are set up to practice.
Yeah.
They have 10 minutes for an appointment.
Mm-hmm.
They can't.
No.
They don't have the time
mm-hmm.
to be able to look at all of those, to be able to take a case history and understand a full case and understand all of the other contributing factors that can be playing into that case.
Yeah.
And then be able to run, like, as a starting point, what's called a comprehensive metabolic blood panel,
mm-hmm.
which is probably the most efficient way to cast the net quite broadly across all of these systems to get an idea of some of what that is telling us.
Mm-hmm.
Where is the pressure, to use your analogy,
mm-hmm.
because your 10 minutes is up, it's done.
Yeah.
So that's why we've then come into this mentality of, well, let's just balance your hormones. And so for any woman that goes into a GP practice that sounds very disrespectful,
mm-hmm.
of explaining that she has headaches, migraines, PMS, really heavy bleeding, that she's bleeding through
mm-hmm.
2 pads an hour. The answer really in a 10-minute appointment is, okay, the first option, try the pill.
Mm.
Then once she hits to about 40, the next mantra now is, because we all love HRT,
mm-hmm.
is, oh, okay, you're probably perimenopausal, so I'll write your prescription for HRT. Because it sounds like I'm being very simplistic, but if you don't, so you can't afford in a 10-minute appointment to have that questioning mind.
No.
I'm sure GPs didn't go into medicine to want to practice like that.
No.
Because when we think back, I'm a bit older than you, but yeah, we had a family doctor,
mm-hmm.
and they would visit you at home.
Mm-hmm.
They would understand your family history.
Yeah.
They would know what are called antecedents, which is kind of your historical predisposition.
Mm-hmm.
And they would sort of spend time understanding your case. And that was what a family doctor did.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that our medicine is set up now, so functional medicine is, in lots of ways, it's integrating a more holistic approach, but it's also, and within a truly holistic approach, it's bringing in medicine, and it's collaborating with doctors and using medicine where it's needed. Mm-hmm. But it's understanding where the connections are and what's causing it. So another really good example, actually, that's just come to mind is reflux. It's a very common symptom that a lot of people experience.
Yeah.
And that can be for a whole variety of reasons. So just putting a Band-Aid over the tap and prescribing a very, very popular medication, which is called a proton pump inhibitor, which suppresses stomach acid. Mm-hmm. If you consulted someone like myself or a colleague of mine or colleagues of mine, they would want to dig into, okay, but what's causing the reflux? Could it be that you're producing too much histamine? Mm-hmm. Could it be that you've got too much bacteria in your small intestine and it's causing pressure in your small intestine, which is popping open the ileocecal valve, and that's causing reflux, as an example. So it's unraveling the ball of wool to, as best you can, its point of origin without being too overcomplicated.
Yes.
Sorry, I talk a lot.
No, I love it. That's why you're here. It'd be a really bad podcast if you just gave one-word answers. Can you imagine?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So anyway, we're finished now. Yeah. Well, the antacid thing, or what the name? That's a huge one, isn't it? Because that stops your stomach acid production, right?
Yes.
Which then causes a whole host of other health issues, down the line.
It can do. I mean, the stomach acid is, and actually I've got a really good person that you should get on to talk about that. But stomach acid is produced for very good reasons by the body. And this is also a mantra that I think about all the time, is that if the body produces something,
Yes.
pretty wise.
Yes.
So the same, so why do we demonize all of these things that the body is producing?
Yes.
So the same as with cholesterol. Well, the body makes 85% of the cholesterol. So why are we spending, why are we demonizing it? Anyway, back to stomach acid.
That's another subject for another day. Yeah.
So stomach acid is, by its term, is very acidic. And as acidic as battery acid. And so it's actually if you think where it is, it's your very first line of defense. If you're gonna, if you eat a salad, maybe that hasn't been washed properly and it's got some bacteria on it, actually, if it hits your stomach acid and you've got enough of it, hopefully it's enough to eradicate that bacteria taking hold, as an example. So it's antimicrobial. It also activates digestive enzymes to be released from our pancreas as well. So it's like a domino effect. It's like, the stomach senses food entering into the stomach, and it's the next domino to fall, to shout to the okay, something coming down the tube, you need to start releasing other enzymes. And it's the first action to start breaking down and what's called denaturing our protein. So if you eat a very heavy protein meal and you feel like it just sits in your stomach like a lead balloon, that's actually a really nice, good marker to think, maybe I'm not actually producing enough stomach acid. So there are lots of very good beneficial reasons to have stomach acid. And it facilitates the absorption of a lot of our minerals. So it facilitates the absorption of zinc, of iron. So we need iron for oxygen delivery, for energy production. It facilitates the absorption of B12. So that's why the body produces it. So we've kind of got a bit off topic, but not really. It's just another indication of...
Yeah, it's so interesting. And the other thing, you said something just then and earlier about, our bodies are so clever.
They are.
And I feel like and everything's there. It's all happening for a reason. It's extremely fine-tuned. It can do amazing things. It does amazing things. And there's this... I remember something else that struck me when I was at your talk. It's like, okay, when you're young, we switch off all your hormones.
Yeah.
Right? And then when you
get to them or switch them all off.
Switch them all off. And then you get to 40 plus.
And we'll replace them.
And we'll replace them and switch them all back on.
It's like going at it with like a sledgehammer. It's like, really? What?
Yeah, what the hell? And then I just feel like a lot of the approach is we'll just switch that off.
Yes.
Just switch that off.
Turn that off.
Turn that off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got reflux, just switch it off. Yeah, just switch off your stomach acid. Pain is obviously unpleasant. And, I will grab an ibuprofen here and there. But pain is a signal and it's a message. And I also feel like our body's giving us messages all the time.
Yeah.
Like a good one. If I eat a heavy meat dinner and it sits, I think I do have low stomach acid. But we don't listen. I think if we could all learn to listen to this, sending us signals all the time, and it's and just this thing like, well, just switch that off. And it's a bit like feelings, to get all deep, but we try to switch feelings off as well.
That's really true.
Rather than sitting with them going, okay, this feeling's not very nice, but what is it telling me?
Yeah.
And it's there for a reason. My subconscious or something, an instinct is telling me something, and we just go, switch that off with a glass of wine, or
it's really true. Those are, to go back to sort of talking about what blood is made up of. So yes, it is a beautiful cocktail of all of those chemicals and messages, and those chemicals that activate pain receptors. And absolutely, that is then communicating back to the brain, ow, something's hurting. So it is completely that. It's a message. So actually, of course, medications absolutely save lives and have their place without doubt.
Yeah.
But what we're talking about here are the nuances of, I think the nub of it is there isn't an excuse if we can't give good reason because somebody is going to a health professional to ask, why am I feeling like this? So the answer is not, oh, we're just going to switch that off. We're going to switch off your hormones because that's not the answer.
No, that's not the answer.
The answer is we want to get to the nub of why you're feeling that pain. Like let's say with endometriosis. Now that's a very complex condition, and there are many contributing factors to that particular condition. And I am pleased to say there is definitely more funding being associated to endometriosis, because I do feel that it has been a despicable situation of gaslighting women with this condition. But the pendulum is swinging in the right direction. But endometriosis does cause women awful pain, debilitating pain, and the level of bleeding that these women experience means that they can't go into work.
No.
This is very different to PMS pain, which is unpleasant.
Yeah.
But this is debilitating. Yeah. And so absolutely there is very good reason in that situation to be able to use progesterone as a hormone, to be able to counterbalance that hormone level, because the higher levels, it's not estrogen dominant condition, but when a woman has her period and in the first part of her menstrual cycle where she has estrogen is in ascendance, counterbalancing that with progesterone to level that out, because the tissue is much more responsive to estrogen, is very well placed. And that's a very good use of medicine. But just switching off a mechanism without understanding the mechanism, I feel is lazy and poor practice. And inexcusable.
Yeah, agree.
Face the wall.
If only everybody could have access to you and people like you.
Well,
that would be amazing, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I mentor and train a lot and work with a lot of amazing practitioners, and this movement of, and lots and lots of collaborative doctors. I really have to say that work with nutritionists, but also embrace functional medicine and their GPs, but they work collaboratively and they are functional medicine trained as well. There are lots of these that are available, and there is a real movement to educate. And so the more that I can do podcasts and just speak to and speak in this way, then it's making everybody just raise the bar. It's raising the bar at every level, isn't it? That's what we want to do, raise the bar.
I love that, raise the bar.
Yeah.
And what we'll do is in the show notes is we'll put some links to resources where people can find
we definitely
these
can do that.
Doctors, and because also people don't know where to look.
No.
Most people wouldn't even know those people exist.
Yeah.
Let alone where to find one. So,
and people, I'm not seeing clients any longer, but there is a resource. If you come to my website, then I can refer you to specific practitioners.
Yeah. And we're going to do our lovely series and go into depth on lots of these subjects.
So you can, get informed.
Yes. Because it's not simple, but actually once you understand some basic things around, so one of my favourite subjects, which everyone always cringes at, but is pooing. See, everyone always goes, oh my God,
I don't know, I love to talk about poo, that's fine.
So for lots of reasons. My mother died of bowel cancer, so that's one reason I'm mildly obsessed with not, having the same fate. And I have IBS. I've had IBS since I was a kid, and the constipated type of IBS.
Okay.
And I know a lot of women who don't poo very much. And something that I didn't know, which is, I guess, obvious, but is that your sort of excess estrogen and hormones, used hormones,
are eliminated in your feces.
Eliminated through your poo. So if you're not pooing, and then you've got that recirculating, that
it
is something
has
that
an
would
impact. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What? And this is the whole thing about the whole body. Everything's connected and interconnected,
That's exactly
and it doesn't all work in silos.
And I was giving I was doing a webinar yesterday actually for a menopausal app, and in the workplace, and I was showing a slide, and we were talking about the gut microbiome. So the gut, and there was a slide that I showed that that illuminated all of the different axes that are connected to. So we talk about the gut, but really what we're talking about is the ecosystem that resides within predominantly the large intestine. So this ecosystem of trillions of bacteria and viruses and fungi and parasites, which make up this ecosystem. And within that, there are embedded nerves that run all the way through our gastrointestinal tract by way of, it's called the vagus nerve, and it's called the wandering nerve because it does just that. It travels, it originates in the brain, and it wanders and fans all the way through the gastrointestinal tract. And then it then communicates to the lungs, to the brain, to the cardiovascular system, to there's a gut kidney axis, there's a gut bone axis, so basically what goes on in the gut, it is directly, there are these minute communication molecules that are transverse across this nervous system to all of these other axes. And so being chronically constipated, and that would be actually not passing the stool every day, is being constipated, has a direct impact to that ecosystem. And therefore then the diversity and the different, if you like, families that take up residency within that ecosystem changes. And that then has a ripple effect by way of these axes to every other system. So yes, it is. And this is why functional medicine is so engaging. You don't come into this line of work if you just want to get your qualifications, stick it up on the wall and say, this is what I do. Because this literature is changing all of the time, and you've got to be passionate about your job to be continuing to be humble enough to say, okay, actually what I learned 5 years ago, and that's actually not quite the same. You would never give but you've got to continually be questioning yourself that you're on top of your game, and you know what's currently in the literature. And it's really important. And with constipation, there can be many other reasons. It can be you can have slow, what's called wave-like motions, peristalsis, if your vagus nerve is not firing optimally. And that can be because you're low in acetylcholine. It can be if you're chronically stressed and you're releasing a lot of cortisol, then that will send a message to the brain to say, okay, stop. It will slow down the vagus nerve, and that can cause constipation. There can be many reasons. So it's really important to just kind of take a step back and sort of look under the hood of as many systems as you can, and be able to spend time with someone that is invested and can partner with you in your health. And that's sort of that's what all of these amazing practitioners can do.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's the you were saying there's lots of different reasons for constipation, because when I was younger, you go to a GP and they give you fibre gel,
which can make you feel more bloated. And actually, to your point, having low stomach acid is definitely a risk factor for constipation, because it's the first domino to fall.
Right.
You need that to activate that peristalsis as well. So that's definitely a connection.
Yeah, the whole knock-on effect. And for people like me, so we're actually getting, hopefully, what someone you suggested on to talk about bowel.
Yes.
IBS. Yes.
Yeah.
And often the first thing is, well, you need more fibre.
Yeah.
But if you're like me and you're sensitive to FODMAPs, and particularly fructans, which is things like onions and garlic, and often things that are supposedly, well, they are healthy, but they will aggravate someone like me.
Absolutely.
So the first thing will be, right, take fibre gel or take more fibre. So you do that, and then you feel shocking.
Awful.
Absolutely shocking.
Yeah.
Because you're still constipated, and but you're then incredibly bloated, and you probably feel a bit sick, and you have stomach ache, and then you're just this awful. So yeah, I think a lot of people will have had that. It's a bit like it's just a sort of very like one solution-y kind of, here, have more fibre. That's the solution to constipation.
And there's a contraindication right there, really, is that if you go to the doctor with one thing, so you said reflux, so you're prescribed a PPI, so you suppress your stomach acid, then a month later you go back and say, look, okay, I've just been having this constipation for months now.
Yeah.
And okay, we'll go on fibre.
Yeah.
So that's a classic example where if I was taking that case, I would say, oh, hang on a moment, I'm suppressing their stomach acid. Actually, they probably need more stomach acid to at least, I'd work top down, and let's optimize their digestive secretions. Let's get that wave-like motion moving.
Yeah.
And let's start there.
Yeah.
Rather, and then the whole. Yeah. If you can't tolerate FODMAPs, then you may have a degree of small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And
probably.
Anyway, there we go. Anyway,
enough about my bowels, but probably.
Write me a check for
I need to.
Yeah,
later. I will. But yeah, it is that whole, I'll give you one thing and then I'll give you another thing to sort out the side effect of that thing.
Yeah.
And then, I think getting to the root cause of things, if you can, and if you don't have access to somebody like you, then there is a lot you can find out for yourself. Yeah. You can figure it out. You can be your own detective, I think. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I know that let's just talk about the elephant in the room, is that this type of healthcare is expensive.
Exactly.
I think that's what we're skirting.
Yes, we are.
It is.
Yeah.
And that doesn't sit well with me. And I try and do, and that's why sort of trying to do as many of these podcasts and webinars that I do on my website, and trying to do as much as I can at a really affordable price, or as free where I can, so that this information is out there, and sort of, and put that on anyway. But this, I suppose, this is where I feel it is the fault of our healthcare system, is that we have put the state of the chronic health that is burdening the NHS has sucked the joy, I'm sure, out of any GP that came into medicine with an inquisitive mind.
Yeah.
To be able to spend time with that person and really try and engage, because actually just building that therapy, not just, but building and partnering with people and having that time and building that therapeutic relationship is gold.
Yeah.
Because it is that person that feels heard. And that is, especially in this cohort that we're talking about today in sort of women's health, is because women's health has been so sidelined I think then their experience of walking into a GP surgery and their symptoms not being validated is probably the final straw. And I see this so much in women who are in their 40s and they are dismissed, and either they're not, and I'm not for a minute saying that hormone therapy is the magic cure, but it does help an awful lot of women, and they're not given it. Maybe the doctor hasn't taken that module to really understand what is the right type of HRT to prescribe, what the doses are, and so then the patient leaves that surgery feeling just really unheard.
Yeah.
And that is, that's a big missing link, because then they just feel really demoralized and it's a broken system. So if, I mean, I can't single-handedly change the system, but I think in terms of what we can do is we can work from the ground up, and we can certainly teach. There's a in terms of our curriculum, in terms of teaching biology and teaching about health.
Yes.
It is so outdated.
Yes.
It is so dry. It's so dull. You know, when I was helping my daughter Millie, sorry, Dan, sort of with her biology GCSE, there, I mean, it was just floored by the way that the questions are asked, and sort of just, it's so dry. It's like we can make this so much more engaging to inspire young women from a much younger age to be able, and then we're creating a snowball effect of much more informed women and women who want to go into medicine and do it a different way. That's what we can do.
Definitely.
So if anyone wants to give me a teaching job at a school, you know where to find me.
No, but it's a great point, isn't it? And that is the biggest battle, is we don't understand our own bodies, and it's not taught well in school.
No.
And they have what they call PSHE and lessons. My kids have them where they, sort of sex ed type stuff. And that, they're just, like you say, it's very outdated. It's not engaging, and it's not taught.
It's not explained
well. And it's just, they all switch off. It's cringe. They've got some teacher that they don't particularly like anyway, sort of embarrassingly, my daughters are an all-girls school, and they had a teacher, but I mean, I feel really sorry for the teacher, demonstrating how to insert a tampon, sort of on a step, just awful. I feel really bad, and they don't want to see that. I was like, I think we can figure that out, or we can ask our mum, or our friend. But what all the stuff that you've taught me from coming to that would be amazing to have learned, and just,
I think it forms part of the jigsaw, doesn't it? It's like, we kind of need to look at it in what are all the different components that make up healthcare.
Yes.
In the UK. What are all the different components? So, so what are the bite-sized pieces that we can put, where we can make a difference tomorrow, today, that we can start to move the dial and raise that bar that we talked about. And I think that certainly education is a really important, forms a really important part of that. That we can implement straight away.
And just to go back to something you said earlier, was, that a lot of people don't have access to, it's effectively private healthcare, seeing functional medicine practitioner or nutritional therapist. But just, the amount of studying and continuous learning that you have to do, your costs, your fees, and of other people like you are actually incredibly good value. But the problem is, in this
Thank you for acknowledging
country, we don't, because we have free healthcare, we have an interesting view on paying for healthcare, which I think, so a surgeon, for example, and there'll be a surgeon now going, how dare you compare me to, someone who studies nutrition. But,
fair enough.
But I would argue that there's probably, if you added it all up, it's probably very similar in terms of time spent and all the learning and continuous learning you have to do. No one would bat an eyelid at what they're paid. But because they're paid by the NHS through our taxes, obviously, we don't think about that.
Yeah.
When you go and have a, private operation, you have to pay for it, and you go, crikey.
Yeah.
That's 10 grand.
Yeah.
A lot of that is the surgeon's fees and then the theatre fees and all that, it all costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
So that's just, I guess that's my way of saying don't feel bad.
Oh,
I don't think you do, but...
No. It doesn't sit easy with me.
No,
but
I can imagine.
Yes, thank you for acknowledging that. It is, yes, I can't even begin to imagine the amount of money that I've spent on education and further education, and continue to do so.
Ongoing.
But, yes.
And you're at this, I would say, the pioneering end of health where... you're not in a lab and, looking at cures for cancer, but you are looking at all the, the mechanisms. And as you said earlier, the microbiome has become famous, hasn't it? It's become a sort of trend, which is good because it's... Yeah. But it's almost, it's that, isn't it? It's a trend at the moment.
It's a trend, and I think there was an interesting article in the Times this weekend all about Zoe, which obviously everybody and it's, I think I just read the article. It's been written very well because it shows the two sides to it. In terms of how it's useful, but also how it can be counterintuitive, and that we know infinitely more about the microbiome than we did 5 years ago, and we will know even more in another 5 years. But we just have to be careful not to put everything, because otherwise at the door of one particular system, or because then we're following the patterns of the past. So I think we just need to be. I would say that I'm a generalist with a specialist interest in women's health. But I kind of like to kind of, I like to have my head in many different lecture theatres and see how that applies. And
which you have to do because it's all connected. The systems don't work separately. And there's obviously I'm in the supplement business, so I'm not going to slag it off too much. But there is, there's a lot of money to be made from, drinks with, gut-friendly drinks and all that. And it's just a brilliant marketing opportunity.
Menowashing. It's kind of
Menowashing.
Menowashing.
Let's talk about menowashing.
Oh, okay.
What do you mean by menowashing?
So, obviously, thanks to Davina McCall, which I think she has done an amazing job, putting her head above the parapet, and she's done 2 TV programs on Channel 4, which really sort of brought the topic of the life stage of, actually, it was focused on menopause, but thankfully, now that has been broadened out to perimenopause as well, into the fore. So this is a completely natural life stage that women enter into as these hormones that ebb and flow for 20, 30 decades begin to change as the ovaries, as the follicles begin to decline that are in the ovaries. And that can and does cause a number of symptoms that many, many women really struggle with and find really debilitating. And really, until Davina did her TV program, this wasn't mainstream. It wasn't this life stage of it was called The Change, or, or no, certainly our mothers never talked about menopause.
Never.
I mean, it just wasn't talked about.
No.
So what has happened really in the last 6-8 years maximum is that this conversation has become much more mainstream, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But what I mean by menowashing is now, of course, to your point, is that every marketing, anyone with an inch of a marketing cell in their body or a sales has thought, is there an angle on this? Is there an angle?
Yeah.
You know, is there a face cream that can help with menopause, dry skin with menopause?
Yeah.
Is there a supplement that can eliminate hot flushes, that can prevent the weight gain around the middle, that can stop the brain fog, and help with sleep? Yeah. So this is, you know, there are pillows, there are eye creams, there's shampoo.
Yeah, you know.
What did I see the other day in the airport? So, I mean, anyway, there's probably chewing gum.
Probably.
That, you know, so that's menowashing. And I'm approached on a weekly basis by supplement companies to champion and to ambassador a product. And I just can't put my name behind a singular multi-product because the body is beautifully intricate and you can't, and it just depends which system is taking the most strain as to why that particular woman is experiencing weight gain more or unexplained weight gain over brain fog or hair shedding, or it just depends where those missing hormones. And so there is no one magic formula that is going to,
which is a shame.
Which is why I can't do that. So individual supplements or formulas, once you have a better understanding of that case, absolutely. But sort of those kind of multi-formulas, powders, however beautiful, however expensive the price tag, however gorgeous the women on the cover look, I can't quite get behind.
No.
Controversial.
No.
We shut down flames.
No. Well, we don't want this podcast to be some sort of anodyne. Let's just say what people want to hear and not say the things we want to say.
Okay.
Yeah. No. So actually, time has flown.
Okay.
So we've got so much to talk about, so many things. But as I keep saying, we are going to do a lovely detailed series. We're going to cover lots of these things with much more kind of practical stuff.
Absolutely.
So, for example, if you have a teenage daughter with heavy periods, how can you help her?
Absolutely.
All of those things. So that is coming. I'm going to ask you a couple of annoying questions that I know I have warned you.
You're never annoying.
Never annoying. So just a couple of things. I do know that health practitioners don't like these kind of questions because, as we've just said, there is not one single answer. Just a couple of ones. So if you could recommend one book to help women understand their hormones and their cycle, is there one book you recommend?
Easy. Hands down, The Period Repair Manual by Lara Briden.
Brilliant.
Easy.
Excellent. I would concur with that.
And actually, as another... so she's written 2 books, and her third book is going to be out in the UK in May, and I am going to be proofing it.
Wow.
So that will be out in May, folks.
Brilliant.
So,
okay.
But that is the book that you need to read, and you need to get your daughters to read. It's
Period Repair Manual. We'll link it in the notes. Yes, and I've heard her talk and she's phenomenal. And she has amazing free videos on her website.
She does.
Really, really brilliant.
Yeah.
So that's a good place to go. If you could recommend one thing we should teach our teenage daughters, what would it be? Apart from avoid dodgy blokes.
Australian ones.
Yeah.
My daughter's currently there.
Yeah.
Okay. In all seriousness, I think to be interested and inspired by your body. So to be inquisitive and interested about your body and how it works,
rather than hate it,
because it will serve you so well.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And if you could recommend one thing that has a huge impact on women's health post 40, what would that be?
Okay, I'm going to say, because you said one word, stress.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and actually, I've got to ask you about something you said off
one other
air.
question.
Yeah. I've got two, actually.
So, but stress, because stress to the brain is the biggest contributing factor to ill health. Now, and I say that because the brain houses the master controller of all of our hormones. So it's like so it's a little axis. Well, it's not little. And I want you to sort of envisage one of those old telephone operators that used to sit with the headphones on.
Yes,
So it's embedded in the hypothalamus, and that is the master controller. So stress comes into the hypothalamus, and that operator then is on full alert, sort of sending messages to do various things in the body. So stress you immediately think of as, okay, sitting here preparing to do a podcast. But stress is basically not sleeping properly, is not eating properly, is having a burden of a chronic infection, is having financial constraints, is going through a divorce, is empty nest syndrome, is physical and emotional, it's circadian, it's what we call, it's inflammatory. So if you've got imbalance in the gut, if you've got a viral burden, and it's also what we call metabolic. So if you have got poor control of your, what we call in science, your lipids, so your body fats, if you've got poor control of your blood sugar, that is the biggest contributing factor to activating the stress response. And that operator is just working full pelt, and that is the biggest diminishing. It's an ever then decreasing circle. Your body doesn't have enough energy to be able to then divert to other bodily systems. Because when we come, because your question was post 40, when we come into midlife, we need the same amount of energy to drive all of these other bodily systems, our skeletal health, our muscular skeletal system, our cardiovascular system, our liver health, our kidney health. All of this is driven by cellular energy. And if we're not controlling our blood sugar, if we're not really paying attention to our circadian rhythm, if we're not getting good quality sleep, if we're not taking care of our bone health, if we're letting our muscle mass go, I know all of this takes time, but we have to actually put work into all of this. That in our that all of this that we took for granted in our teens and our 20s and our 30s, we kind of, all of these small things make a difference, and it's kind of payback time. So because our reserves start to diminish, so we want to be able to maintain our reserves for a healthy life and health span. So that's kind of what I would say, is trying to manage all of those stresses.
And people will say, well, I can't do anything about external stress, which is correct. So if you, I don't know, if there's a family illness or an ill parent, obviously you can't do anything about that, but you can do like stressors on the body, like managing your sleep, taking care of your sleep.
Yeah, I mean, it also, people are going to be, oh God, really? We're saying that again?
Yeah.
But maintaining, and come back to that, what we call that, your metabolic health.
Right.
So, honestly, every time your blood sugar level is unstable, is dysregulated, it depletes, it robs you of the essential vitamins and minerals that drive this biochemistry. So it's sort of like you're robbing the piggy bank of all of those nutrients that you need to divert to build bone, to build muscle, to build, which then, then if you keep building muscle, then you protect your bones to prevent a fall. So, okay, so that ultimately what I'm saying is that comes back to, okay, am I going to boil an egg in the morning or am I going to grab another croissant and have a coffee on the go? Sadly, when we get to our 40s, those incremental things do make a difference and it's cheaper.
Yeah.
So it's about really, and eating well, it really doesn't need to be expensive. It does definitely take more time.
Yeah.
I do recognize that.
Yeah.
But if we invest in meal planning, and so for example, on Sunday, I made a roast chicken. You use every bit of that chicken for different meals throughout the week to then make a risotto. You can and then the carcass you boil up overnight in a crock pot, and that forms the base of a soup for 2 lunches. You take that to work.
Yeah.
It is about cheap cuts of meat like mince. You can make, and you can add in loads of vegetables to that as well, and that also makes a lunch. It is about these incremental differences where you're getting as many nutrient dense foods and eat. That's what counterbalances the stressors that rob your piggy bank of your metabolic reserve. And that's what we need to protect as we move into midlife. I'm not going to say old age.
No.
Midlife. And eating seasonally is also super cheap.
Yeah.
So at the moment, we've got broccoli, we've got cauliflower, we've got parsnips, we've got potatoes. We don't need to demonize the potato.
Yep.
We've got carrots, we've got spinach, we've got, and I'm trying, nothing that is imported. So I've reeled off 7 there.
Yeah.
And those are all super cheap that you can get if you're lucky enough. If you've got in Lewis, where we live, we have the lovely fruit and veg boys that come up twice a week.
Yes.
You don't, or just if you buy them from a supermarket, just don't go down the middle aisles, my friends. Just stick to the outside aisles of the supermarket and buy the fresh food.
Yeah. So I think the message there is what you eat does really have a huge impact.
It really does. And the window of opportunity, it definitely does change. We can get away, I just dropped a T there, we can get away with a lot more in our 20s and 30s, but our bodies, we do need to show them a bit of love. We do need to slow down a bit. We do need to, it's payback time. We do, because all of these vitamins and minerals, they're called vitamins, and the Americans have got this pronunciation right, VITA, because they are vital. They are vital for human health. Yeah. And actually, but your product, your essential fatty acids, they're essential. They're called essential fatty acids because they're essential for human physiology. We don't make them ourselves. We need these fats. So, diet and nutrition and supplements where they're bridging a nutrient gap are really important for this life stage.
Thank you. And I'm going to finish with, we're doing that podcasty thing where, I don't know if you do this on your podcast, where you ask everyone the same question at the end.
Oh no, but I like it.
Come on. Right. Well, there are 2 questions actually, but we haven't figured out which is the better one. I asked Liv both of them.
Okay.
But so the first one was, if you could do anything without fear of what others would think of you, what would it be?
Be in a Western musical.
Love that.
Yeah. Always wanted to be on the stage.
Me too. Yeah.
Jazz hands.
Love that. Okay. And the other question is, if you could start a business or some kind of venture, like writing a book, which
I don't want to write a book.
No.
Yeah.
And you knew success was guaranteed, so there's no fear of failure, what would it be?
To have a women's health clinic that was affordable for all, that healthcare was, that quality, exceptional healthcare was affordable for all.
Brilliant. Love that. Perfect way to end. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. And yes, lots more to come.
Yeah, can't wait.